Welcome. This is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast, a special Wednesday episode. And I'm with Julie this week, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Julie, and I am a mental health counselor, and I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. And tell us a little bit about your expertise and your background.
My background, I guess I started in art. I have background in art, early childhood development, mental health, obviously, expressive arts like movement therapy and laughter yoga therapy. So lots of stuff with little kids and adults working to just be better every day.
I could tell from your social media that you had an artist background.
Definitely my first love, art.
What does it involve to obtain an M.Ed and an LPC, those credentials?
The M.Ed, that's just, I got a master's in education. Other people might have a master's of arts or an MS, master's of science. So that's what M.Ed stands for. But to basically be a licensed professional counselor, it's basically a minimum of 8 to 10 years of education and practice. I don't think a lot of people know that, but it's pretty extensive. If you want to be licensed, you're required to get a bachelor's degree, get a master's degree, and then do licensing tests and then have 3,000 hours of practice after you graduate before you have a provisional license and then you get like a full license. It's a lot of school, and that's 8 to 10 minimum. A lot of people take their time.
I knew what a Master of Education was, but I did have to look up the LPC. Thanks for explaining that. What do you do as a health embodiment guide?
So basically, that's my Instagram title that I have, because I've heard it's best to keep therapy and like coaching or online stuff separate, or to just go in one direction or the other. But to me, basically, that means just like guiding people to their optimal timeline in health and wellness. So that means, for me, it means providing psychoeducation, being a good role model of health and wellness, and providing just valuable insight and tools for personal development. And I'm just really passionate about health in general and personal development.
So it sounds like you help people. You have two different hats, and maybe they overlap, but it sounds like you're a therapist, but you also do coaching.
That's a little more of a new role, but I am, stepping into the coaching world, and a lot of stuff to learn there for sure.
In the past, I know you've had a loved one affected by kratom dependency, and that's what was the first time we met on Instagram talking about that. Can you tell us about that experience?
Absolutely. So I was with a past partner, and the whole time we had been together, he had always taken kratom. He was doing the capsules. And that was where I was first introduced to kratom. I didn't know what it was before that, never had heard of it. I think I had heard of kava bars, but I'm not even sure I don't think I had even been to a kava bar at that point. And obviously now I know that not all of them, many of them do serve kratom there. But anyway, he was doing the pills, and he would just do that every day. I don't think I thought too much about it. And then at one point, he got into fentanyl and was doing that for about a month. And thank God, obviously, it was pretty short lived, but that stuff's obviously really strong. So it took a hold of him, and he already had this brain chemistry to really like the opiate hit. It took a hold of him, and he quickly realized that he's got to get off of this. So he went to a methadone clinic and was tapering down with methadone. And with that, like I said, I didn't really know a whole ton about kratom. I really wasn't even like researching it. I even experimented with it some. It was very like on and off. It wasn't a consistent thing at all. And I know what it feels like, and I experimented with him. I don't really have an addictive personality, I've noticed. I think we all in our little obsessions. I'm on the spectrum of ADHD, so I do want the dopamine hit and like to do things like listen to songs on repeat and that kind of stuff. But in that relationship, the kratom use, I can't say it really affected me, or at least not to my knowledge, until it became something bigger. And then I've had another relationship where someone was dependent on kratom, and that's where I started learning a lot more about it and really the dangers of it. And it's tough. I think no matter what the substance is, if you have a loved one, a partner, anybody that you care about that's addicted and dependent on something, and just knowing what it's doing to the body and how it might be affecting them. It can be really hard. And I think it's easy for people when they're really in it and not ready to come on the other side of recovery and getting clean and healthier. It's easy for people to be in denial and to just have that bias to continue to use. And being a loved one of someone in that situation, it's really hard because you want better for them, you want the best for them. But so that's, I guess I'll say that's my experience with that.
Kratom, piggybacking on what you're just saying, it occupies this unique space, I think, because it is relatively safer and it's not as dangerous as fentanyl, and it is not as powerful and as addictive as fentanyl. And it's legal and it's readily accessible. So those of us who get addicted to it, it's really easy to justify and more. If you get hooked on fentanyl, it's almost your denial system is based on just pure addiction. But with kratom addiction or dependency, it interacts with efforts to normalize it and in the justification of it, even though you're having some bad results, even though you're spending more money than you want, it's affecting your health. I think it's a different kind of denial and justification system than maybe a more truly classically dangerously seen drug.
That's something I find really interesting about it too, is like you're saying, the just normalcy of it, even though a lot of people, which listening to the podcast, it's crazy, just like police officials and doctors, people, and just the layperson, like a lot of people just still don't know what it is unless deep dive into researching it. And again, that is really tough just with any addiction. Alcohol, it's so accessible and it's so normalized in social settings. And I guess on a deeper level, it's like, how can we create a society and a life on the micro and macro where we like don't want to escape from, and where people are provided for and are happy and healthy?
Yes. Do any of your own clients deal with kratom habits or had trouble quitting, or any other type? You work with other people with any type of addiction in your practice?
So in my private practice, no, I haven't experienced anyone that's come to me specifically with kratom dependency. And if they've been using it, it hasn't come up as a topic. I've definitely treated people working through other substances, food, alcohol.
What kind of tools or modalities do you recommend for somebody to try to quit kratom or grapple with any addiction?
As a therapist, I'm going to say finding a therapist is huge. Everyone's different. I know a lot of people, even today, I'm like in the therapy world, so I hear it, but a lot of people sometimes will gripe about talk therapy. And I think there's so many great modalities out there, but even just talk therapy in and of itself is a mindfulness practice, because someone is there working with you in an intimate one-on-one setting, and they're an objective person. So they're not biased. Hopefully, if they're a good therapist, they're not biased and they're accepting and compassionate towards whatever you're going through, and they're going to meet you there. So I'd say, first off, I think getting support. If you don't have someone you can talk to, if you don't have that support, therapy is great. And I know often a lot of people talk about getting access to therapy. Not everyone has insurance. I guess I just want to do a little plug for Open Path Therapy. There's also other ones out there, but Open Path Collective is a really great website for people that don't have insurance, that want a lower rate. So they do a sliding scale there. I just think that's a great thing that the world offers. I'd say getting support, and so many people have talked about on here, community support. That's really important. Telling your story. You're not making it a secret, like being seen and being vulnerable in what you are going through or what you've been going through or what you've gone through is just so paramount to recovery and healing. But other healing tools, I want to say just integration tools. And again, that could be community, but things like massage, things like movement, like getting in your body and making friends with your body, and just building that awareness of how something is affecting you, really, no matter what it is, whether it's kratom or another substance or a person's energy or a TV show. Like, we're affected by these things. It might not seem like a big deal, but just having that intentionality and that awareness can be really huge. And again, just emphasizing the mindfulness and mind-body connection. I'd say those are great tools to recovery.
I know you mentioned yoga earlier. Would techniques like breath work or meditation be something you'd recommend somebody, probably with any mental health condition, but particularly with addiction?
Definitely breath work, yoga, like any body-based practice, exercise, like anything that you're doing where you're in motion and focusing on your body, or like you're saying, your breath and breath work. All of these things are focusing on your nervous system and, again, awareness of the body, and they can just help address the physical and emotional impacts of addiction. So things like meditation, all that stuff, they help promote relaxation, and they're going to help you get into a parasympathetic state, which is a calm, resting state of our body rather than this fight, flight, freeze state. So those are all really great. And just for treating anxiety, I hear a lot of people talking about the anxiousness that comes up when they're detoxing, and just in life, anxiousness comes to all of us at different times, but oftentimes that energy is in our head. People often report, I feel anxious, and it's okay, where are you feeling it? And it like higher up on their body. So getting in your body with any kind of body practice is going to help ground that energy and just help you release tension and trauma.
Even taking a dance class, I would put in that bucket of practice.
100%. Definitely dance. I encourage that for sure.
What role do you see nutrition or even herbal medicine play in supporting recovery? And do you know of any non-addictive plants that could be helpful?
I guess I'm curious how you mean helpful, like just helpful in recovery. And
I guess there's two questions in there, so we can do the plants question first. Part of it, many of us like got attracted to kratom in the first place because we're believe in alternative practices and it's natural and it's plant-based, and there was usually a lot of marketing or online information that wasn't completely had the full picture. But so some of us feel a little bit burnt, but I think there probably are some plants that might be helpful that are not addictive that could help. Emily recommended a bunch of supplements. There's the withdrawal phase. But anyway, do you do anything with plant work in your practice?
I'm not doing any like psychedelic therapy at the moment. I am looking into ketamine therapy, and I do advocate for that under professional supervision. I think ketamine is amazing for treating depression and trauma, and that's an interesting substance because it's a dissociative, so it's almost got this psychedelic like visual nature, but it's like just so calming and relaxing, and it just helps scatter out all the things that we're dealing with, the trauma or whatever we're working through, and can help us have a new experience and reorganize it with a therapist or a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like in my practice, I don't, that's also a bit of a tricky line because I'm not a nutritionist. I don't necessarily prescribe certain supplements or things like that. I can diagnose people. I do diagnose people, but prescribing medication or herbal supplements it can be a little tricky. There's definitely certain things that are like A-okay to suggest to anyone, like magnesium or certain vitamins, because it's not going to hurt us. Like most people need magnesium. But as far as detoxing and being in recovery, supplementation is super important. And everyone's mentioning Emily's supplement, which I think is amazing. And that seems like a great go-to for sure. All the research I've done and what I know about kratom addiction and withdrawals is that those are really great ones to have. And especially because you don't want to be having all these pill bottles and just having it in one place. But when we're detoxing, it's going to deplete your body of essential nutrients. And so these supplements and herbs that are safe and that have a lot of these anecdotal stories of saying, I'm not having any effects, or that this really helped me in recovery, that'll help soothe withdrawal symptoms and help repair and boost your immune system and help your mood and balance your body overall.
How do you guide clients in managing withdrawal symptoms, maybe even holistically without relying on pharmaceuticals?
I think it's really important to, as we said, like having support, but also having a plan, having some kind of plan and having someone that can help you stay accountable. That's if I'm working with someone who is trying to get off of some substance, that's a huge part of just like understanding their triggers and understanding what's led them to this point. As far as helping people manage withdrawals and manage recovery, I think having a plan is really huge, and staying on that plan. There's some really amazing quote. How does it go? It's, if you're not working a conscious program, you'll be worked by an unconscious one, the unconscious one that like is already the default in your brain. So I love that quote for recovery, because in recovery, like in life, it's so true. If we're not conscious and aware of what we want, what we're doing, and have some kind of plan, next steps moving forward, it's so easy to just get into autopilot and just where we want to be. But another aspect, I guess I want to also touch on managing withdrawal. I think another huge thing is like researching, just like knowing what to expect and what like is going to work for you. When people are in recovery, like it's so specific and it is able to be customized, and it should be, because everyone is different and everyone has different capacity and different ability in different ways. So I think it's just really important to do what works for you. But again, falling back on like the community support and research, definitely just researching on what to expect.
And we touched on this earlier, but any recommendations around movement or physical activity to support recovery?
I've heard so many stories on this podcast and just researching online that movement is so helpful, like in recovery with restless leg syndrome. So definitely just advocating movement for sure. But I think what kind of movement is going to just depend on you. Again, it's like any movement you can do. We definitely all have different capacity. And so it's like any movement you can do. If it just starts off as I walked around the block, okay, that's great. Like maybe the next day or the following day you go again, but a little further, or switching it up and giving yourself variety. I've heard that too so much from just people in the workout world, myself included. We get bored sometimes. So making sure that you've, again, got this like conscious plan or intention when you notice things are getting stagnant to switch it up, or maybe go on a walk with a friend. But anything that you can do and anything that's as enjoyable as possible would be the best.
That's a good point. When the exercises work and you're not enjoying it, it can become an obstacle. I really believe in exercise for Kratom recovery and managing withdrawals, but I always feel bad. There's a certain subset of people that become Kratom dependent, and they're already ultra athletes. Somebody just recently contacted me, and they're a fitness trainer, and I can't recommend fitness to them because they're already in. But for everybody else, and obviously you don't want to stop your fitness routine if you already have a good one, but I don't know what to say to the people who are already super fit and are exercising a lot.
Well, that's right. Just another really great example of what works for one person isn't going to work for another. If you told someone recovering from an eating disorder, let's move our body and practice mindfulness by going on a walk, they may take that too far and want to. That's often a thing in recovery, is they'll have excess exercise a part of their routines. Everybody's different, just knowing ourselves and what works best for us. But it sounds like movement is really huge with recovering, or I hear that a lot with restless leg syndrome, people talking about how helpful that can be.
What are some simple, accessible embodiment practices somebody can incorporate into their daily routine?
Absolutely. I really love this question so much, because there's two sides to this. So when I think about this answer, I'm thinking general stuff of, okay, some of the things we've talked about, like yoga, working out, resistance training, cardio training, just like basic exercise that we all know about. But embodiment practices, honestly, that really can mean anything, as long as you're like in your body and being aware of what you're doing with your body, and more in your body than scattered and in our brain thinking monkey mind thoughts going every which way. But getting in nature can be really grounding, and that can be a great embodiment practice. Dancing in your room in your underwear, that's an embodiment practice. Crying could be an embodiment practice, which is also a great release. Laughing, I mentioned laughter yoga. If you don't know about that, you've got to look it up. It's amazing. But that's also a really great release, and also a great community social connector. any body movement that feels good to you, where you're just like in your body in motion and you're less focused about the future, you're less focused about the past, you're right here in the moment, making friends, enjoying yourself. If you can laugh or enjoy yourself and bring more pleasure to it, that's optimal, of course, because we can all use more creativity and more just like pleasure in life. And obviously, that's such a huge component when rebuilding back the dopamine, serotonin levels in our system from getting off kratom or substances. But on the flip side, the second part of that would be other things you might see in yoga or therapy, which would be like body scanning, a mindfulness meditation, doing progressive muscle relaxation. And there's so many resources online, or if you sought out help, they have all these tools as well. By building up that toolbox of, okay, I know I have these exercises. We all know about these basic things we hear about: dance, movement, working out. But then all these other things that kind of maybe involve a little deeper awareness of the grounding, the breathing, belly breathing, all of these things are going to really help to calm the nervous system. And even visualization, like using resourcing. There's something in therapy called resourcing, where you're basically just you're thinking about a place. It could be real or imagined. It could be with your pets. It could be with a loved one. A lot of people usually visualize someplace in nature, but a place that makes you feel really calm, at peace, that kind of brings in like an inner smile, and really like creating an experience container with thinking about this place that you can come back to. So just like remembering it in your mind to call upon when you're in distress and when you're overwhelmed and flooded with emotions and need to help regulate. And I want to say one more thing about just the idea of humming and singing. That also can be really huge, because there's just so much research that says just the act of humming, that can help also calm our nervous system, our vagus nerve that's responsible for fight, flight, freeze, and regulating our emotions and all this stuff. And if you're humming and singing, that's just such an easy way to get your body, at least encourage your body to get back into that calm state, where you're more regulated.
And I think that the Harry Kishners get stereotyped, but they're onto something with their chanting.
And I wanted to say a couple other things just for people listening, like a practical thing that you could like literally do right now. Another thing is the butterfly tap. A lot of times we do this in trauma therapy, where if you're feeling overwhelmed, like literally just like touching your body. I guess another message I want to say is like healing and processing our emotions, regulating ourselves. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. It's not complicated. There's obviously a lot of research and all this stuff to know about it, but the practices and the things that you can do for yourself are very simple and they seem elementary. One thing is this butterfly tap. So you just cross your hands on your chest and you just start tapping if you're feeling dysregulated and just need this little reminder to come back to your body, come back to your breath. And it's so simple. And another thing I like to tell people is give yourself a big hug, like literally wrap your arms around your body, maybe sway a little bit and move. And you could even say things. It's definitely helpful to say things, affirm things to yourself, like, I am safe. I'm going to get through this. This is hard right now, but I know it's not always going to be hard. And maybe thinking about that safe place or imagining and visualizing where you want to be on the other side. Just one last thing I want to say as far as like a practical thing that I like to tell people is doing a lot of these are, you could consider an energy hold, but I like to just call this one energy hold, where you're putting one hand on your forehead, just like all your hands on your forehead. And then your other hand that's free goes behind the back of your neck. And you just hold your forehead and the back of your neck. And this is so simple and so easy. And just maybe closing your eyes and taking a nice deep breath. And it's almost like self-massage, just knowing that you've got you. So it's just some really basic, simple things. I have one more, if that's okay, actually.
Please do. Please do.
One more. I wouldn't say this is not necessarily like dealing with like somatics and your body, but another good tool. And I'm going to say I even use this sometimes if I'm feeling overwhelmed or distracted by lots of emotions, you pick a color, any color, and say you pick blue. So you try to find blue in your environment, only looking for blue. And this can be really great. Again, it's not I spy blue is going to cure your trauma kind of thing. It's not like a cure all. Of course, all of these things are just little tools that are your tools in your toolbox to try at different moments in time. And what works today might not work tomorrow. What works for you might not work for me. It's really trial and error. And I think there's so much value in just trying it, like you actively putting any of these things into place, even if they aren't like full cure all or like totally effective in the moment. I think like the fact that you're having the intention and putting it into motion, you're helping yourself in that moment. And you're like you're being proactive about helping yourself. And when there's no one else, like we have to help ourselves. Sorry, I jumped, but with the color thing, you pick a color, you just find all that color in the room. So blue, like where there's a blue sticky note, okay, the pot is blue and the plant outside my window, the sky is blue. And it just gives our mind like this little break and this moment to focus on something else besides maybe the heaviness in our chest or like this racing thought we have. It's just like a little easy exercise.
Thank you for all those. Many of them were very visual. Do you have some videos on these subjects?
Absolutely. My socials, my Instagram, working on building on my YouTube stuff, but I definitely have some of a lot of this stuff in my YouTube or my YouTube/Instagram. Feel free to check it out there. But if you just look up mindfulness tools or like butterfly tapping, obviously the internet is huge. So there are so many resources and a lot of people spreading the information online.
Thanks. I'll put a couple links from your stuff in the show notes.
Awesome.
So many of us are probably on the same page. We agree that addiction or kratom addiction is a symptom of maybe a larger root issues that somebody might have. And many of us find when we remove kratom, we're still in distress and we still have our baseline that we have to deal with. Do you have any ideas of how we can address whatever problems we have inside that were the root causes of our addiction?
Absolutely. So when I'm working with someone, a lot of times someone experiencing addiction or trying to taper off of something or stop using something so much, my first thought is, what does it mean to them? Like, how are they experiencing this? That's definitely a really valuable question of just what does this substance mean to them? How does it serve them? Just getting to understand the triggers and any past trauma. I think a lot of it comes back to childhood or traumas that we've experienced. It doesn't have to be childhood, but past traumas. I think number one, they have to have buy-in. Like they have to have a willingness to be helped or a willingness to get better. So taking that responsibility is number one, and just knowing that, okay, this is where I am, meeting yourself where you are and understanding the reality of that. And so that willingness has to be there for sure for any change to happen. But there's so many things to look at as far as healing addiction. And some of that is like behavior change, the trauma where cognitive reframing, like changing the narrative and looking at your identity. Sometimes a lot of our identity might be wrapped up in the community where we get our fix or the kava bar. That's, I think, really common. Like people to go to the Kratom kava bars and there's people there. So we're getting our community need met there because we might be socializing and feeling good. And maybe there's games there like ping pong or maybe live music. So there's a lot of these other draws to kava bars and things like that. But having to look at, okay, I'm going there every day or I go there once a week and I'm identifying my life, part of my life with being this type of person that does this. So I think also looking at your identity. How is this substance connected to who you are and who do you want to be? Who do you want to be without this substance? And shifting the script, shifting the narrative on that. And that can be really empowering too, because you can do that. We are malleable creatures. We can change. Sometimes it's harder and takes a little longer in figuring out than others to make changes, but change is possible. And I full-heartedly believe that if you want something and work hard enough and have the intention and just keep persistent at it, like you're going to get there. Looking at the narrative, all the things we talked about with like mind body practices, visualization, looking at your body wholly as far as nutrition and just supplements and like things you're intaking, literally anything you're intaking, but that's really important. Sleep, nutrition, just the basics. And I think that's another thing. It's that stuff is so simple. I mean, we hear that eat vegetables or eat a well-balanced meal, get 8 hours of sleep, have friends, have community, feel purposeful. Like all of these things we hear and know, and it's, yeah, okay, like we get it. But they're the basics. It's the fundamentals of living a wellness and having wellness and like living a happy, joyful, healthy life and thriving. Those are the fundamentals. So just coming back to basics, I think. But as far as just like healing addiction, I think a lot of times it comes back to triggers and trauma, getting professional help or finding that community to again feel seen, to feel heard, to not keep this to yourself, because that's community is a place where we can heal.
Thank you. How about any tools to manage cravings? Once we quit Kratom, some of us, we get these urges and sometimes we become overwhelmed and we can't resist. Any advice in that arena?
Cravings. I think one thing is when someone's going through this process to know that's going to happen. Again, to come back to research of, okay, I'm probably going to have cravings. Not to say there's someone out there that quits Kratom and I never had a craving again. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's had that experience, but that's probably an anomaly. It's really difficult, no matter what substance we're quitting. If we're psychologically addicted to something and physically addicted to something, it takes time. So I think one thing is just having the awareness of what is this process? What have other people gone through, knowing what to expect. But as far as cravings, I think mentally, again, just knowing that relapse, they say this a lot in the recovery community, that like relapse it's part of the process. Again, not that it has to happen to everyone and it may not happen to you, but it's definitely a really common part of the recovery process. And it doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're working on it. And it just means that you're that much closer to going that much longer without relapsing if you're continuing on the path of recovery and wanting to stop. I think those things are huge. But as far as cravings, I think another thing is awareness of just like knowing yourself. I think you had mentioned on another podcast episode, there's just some comment about, what to do when things come up, like triggers or stressful situations where maybe you're in recovery and something stressful happens and it's, oh my God, this is the perfect moment where I could use, or I could just go to the head shop or whatever. As much as possible, I think getting ahead of that, I think it comes back to this, if you're not working a conscious program that you create and have in your head for yourself, you're going to be worked by whatever unconscious program that you have by default in the past. And recovery takes time. So there is like an energetic body, mental, spiritual, emotional person in you that knows what it's like to just use this thing and things get better. And so I think like working your conscious program is really huge, and as best as possible, getting on top of whatever life situations you're going to be in, whatever stressors. I've got an interview, or I'm moving, or something happened unexpectedly and it's a huge stressor. Might be a lot easier to want to give into those cravings. But again, coming back to your conscious program and just knowing what to expect, trying to get ahead of it as best you can.
Do you have any success stories from somebody from your practice or your personal life that you've helped get through an addiction and however they define successful recovery?
I'm thinking about some clients I've had, and like I said, I haven't had anyone like exclusively come to me for Kratom in the past, but I have helped people work through alcohol addiction. And I guess I just can't stress enough the importance of, again, movement, these mind-body practices, but also stressing the importance of this is your show. This is your program, and do whatever works for you. So some of the thing, I have one client and he would always go to the sauna. Like he would swim a huge swimmer. So he would swim and then go to the sauna. And that was like it was a religious practice for him most every single day doing that. And he was also working on losing weight and just trying to get healthier and all this stuff. And would still be drinking, but it would become less. And just noticing, I think when we start using our body, like we wake up to the sensations of our being on all different levels, we become more sensitive to the natural process of our body, the natural things that do feel good, like being with friends, having dinner with friends, and whatever else you find pleasure in. So I think just knowing that it's your program and doing what helps you best. So I had a client that was really helpful for him, just
Okay.
going to the gym and working his conscious program of tapering down. And again, sometimes it was more, oh, I drank too much the night before. But it's so intimate, like the reasons why. It's, oh, I can't watch a movie without drinking or taking the substance, or social anxiety. I hear so many people, or there's definitely a huge set of people where they're using Kratom for social anxiety, or just you just sum it up as that, social anxiety. And everyone's just so unique. So I think just knowing yourself and what works.
Thank you. Any advice to someone who's considering quitting Kratom and doesn't know where to start?
It doesn't know where to start. I know everybody always mentions the Reddit, going on subreddit and reading anecdotes and all this stuff. And I think that's really important too. Like research, I'd say research, like the stuff that we expose ourselves to. Knowledge is power. It's, if, oh my God, this is what's happening to my body, or this is why my hair is falling out, or all these things. It's like, it's harder. I think it becomes harder, and this is my opinion, but I would think, and I think it becomes harder to do something knowing it's harming you. That there's also nuance to that as well, but I think not knowledge is really powerful. So I'd start with researching more about it. At least I know that helps me. If I am trying to learn about something, it helps inform me a lot more of, okay, what direction should I go? Because there's so many options out there. You could go cold turkey, you could taper, you could get medical assisted treatment, you could go to rehab. And there's just so many options out there. And knowing your options is empowering, and knowing how it's affecting you is empowering. And I think when we're in that place of, holy crap, I'm addicted to this thing, or holy crap, I got sick, what am I going to do? I don't want anyone to know this. There's obviously so many thoughts someone has when this happens. But I guess I would just want to reiterate that you're not alone, and to seek out the stories, like listening to other people's stories, connecting with other people, the WhatsApp group that you guys have. This podcast is, I think, just changing people's lives. It's incredible and just amazing that you guys are doing this, and just so much gratitude for that. People's stories, telling someone, I heard someone say that recently, tell someone your story. Again, like, you're being vulnerable. That's hard. It's hard, like being in that place wherever you're at. But telling someone is going to take the burden off of you. And that's going to release the emotions that are tied with it a little. And that's going to help you get on the path to healing and recovery.
And thanks for the kind words for the podcast. And my number one recommendation if I was going to answer my own question was, and many of us end up on Reddit first, but the big change, a game changer for me, was when I was able to meet even virtually with other people that were going through the same thing. So definitely check out one of the Kratom meetings. You can go to kratommeetings.com, and there's a meeting every day now, and just talk to other people that are in the same situation as you, walking the same path. And that makes a big difference. Made it the biggest difference for me personally. And on that note,
I think I started on Reddit too. Yeah.
And I guess that leads to the next question. Any recommendations on how to build a supportive network for recovery?
I think just researching meetings that are out there. There's so many online meetings, so that's always available. But you said tips to help people build a community. Trying to find places locally, of course, and sharing your story there. And I think just as a small little, I'm thinking about this like scenario, being like out and about, and someone that's just like open about their story now, and just like sharing it more freely, and like spreading the word about Kratom who knows? Like you might find someone who's been affected by it themselves, someone they know that's been affected by it or they're going through it. So don't discount that, just like you being like a light shining in the world of this is my story and I'm here to help and attract people that might be going through it too. Cause I know that can be a really transformative part of recovery too, is helping someone else. And that's community building too. But I think just looking at meetings, finding places online, if you're listening to this podcast, it's like you're in the right place. So.
Can you tell me about the habit tracker that's on your bio on Instagram, and what other services do you offer?
I made that a few years ago. And so a habit tracker, if you don't know what a habit tracker is, it's basically just like a worksheet that you can track your progress with. So say you're trying to get outside every single day and put your feet on the grass. Or every day I'm trying to ride my bicycle. Whatever goal or thing you're trying to implement in your life, you could use a habit tracker. And it's basically just like a visual representation of tracking your progress. It sounds. So I created this habit tracker I say it's more geared towards creative minds or people that maybe have a hard time with like details or have a hard time with following the rules. Because I noticed that a lot of habit trackers online, on Pinterest, any like downloadables, a lot of them are very rigid and it's 1, 2, 3, January, February, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And we all need to track our progress or that can be helpful. But I feel like it's hard to see, oh, I missed the third day. We want to be perfect sometimes. Or a lot of us might have that tendency, like, I skipped a day, like I'm tossing in the towel. This is over. So I created this habit tracker that is more fluid. It's more like a coloring book. So you can see the colors of the days that you do check off the box of getting outside or riding your bike, whatever the goal is for you. And you can color it in, but there's no numbers, there's no lines. It's more like a coloring book sheet. So that's my habit tracker. But as far as other services I offer, so I'm licensed as a therapist in the state of North Carolina. If anyone is seeking out therapy, they can get in touch with me and through Psychology Today, or like I mentioned, that great website for people looking for lower rates on Open Path Collective. But I offer coaching services as well. I also do EFT sessions with people. This is just one of many therapy techniques and modalities. It stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And you may have seen some of it online. It's people tapping their face and tapping their head and different parts of their body. But it's a technique from energy psychology as well. It's a mind-body technique. A lot of times people call it emotional acupressure, but it targets emotional blocks, trauma, core beliefs, and just challenges you might be going through. It's also really good for addiction and like cravings in the moment. It can be really powerful. It's 99%. It has a 99% efficacy rate. It's evidence-based and backed by neuroscience. So really a huge advocate for EFT. I find it really helpful. That's trying to think. I offer Reiki services as well. I'm a very spiritual person, so it's a really huge part of my life. And I really love helping people feel better and helping people come back into balance and just find healing and transformation and helping them process Reiki energy work as well.
Thank you for sharing so much today and all your ideas. And I don't think we've had anybody on the podcast to date that had your perspective. And so I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I feel honored.
Same here. And on a fun note, we often ask our guests about these next couple questions. What kind of music are you into?
I was waiting for this question. Pretty easy. I like most music, but when I really think about it, the most typical kind of music you hear me listening to is going to be dream pop. There's so many genre names, but I love dream pop. I love taiko, just like EDM. So I love electronic music. But on the flip side, I love jungle music. So like just heavy drum and bass music. Love that. But I really like hip hop too. So I'd say those are my like main jams, but I like most music, I'd say.
Dream pop is a new alternative rock neo-psychedelia. My Google reading of the Wikipedia page of dream pop. But
I tend to listen to music without words. I identify as a INFJ, as in the Myers-Briggs personality, and they say that people that have that top introverted intuition need like space to contemplate. So sometimes like music with a lot of words, I don't get me wrong, like I like music with words, but it's definitely just easier listening for me to just be in my own head and just be in my own energy when there's no words or like minimal words.
Do you have any travel destinations on your bucket list?
My bucket list, I would love to go. I've been to Ecuador. I'd love to go back to South America or Central America. One of my life goals is to learn Spanish fluently. I'm taken, so many classes, but I want to be fluent one day. So Central or South America. And I'd also really love to go to Thailand. I've been trained in Thai body work. So I'm also like an unofficial massage therapist. That's a huge passion in my life as well. But I'd love to go to Thailand. Me and my partner are going to go to Peru next spring at some point. I know we're doing that just for a week. I'd say one of the Spanish countries and Thailand.
I took 2 years of Spanish in high school, then 2 years in college. It was still horrible. And then I went down to Guatemala and I studied Spanish for 2 months. And the biggest thing I did was I increased my vocabulary from 50 words to like at the time 300 words. So
Wow.
I could get by, but my brain does not conjugate. It's always it's one form of the verb, or I'm always messing it up, and it just my brain doesn't work like that. But it's a lovely goal, and I had that goal once. I just eventually, after the 2 months in Guatemala, and then I actually lived in a part of Detroit that had, and it's a very high Spanish speaking area, and I could get by, but and now I'm horrible. I've lost it all. Good luck. I hope you can achieve that. Anyway, we would like to add before we close out the interview.
I guess I just want to encourage people if they are struggling to not be afraid to reach out for help, no matter who that is. And there's no shame in reaching out for help. We all need help sometimes. And that's actually like one of the bravest things and like most honorable things you can do. And just encourage people that people going through it, you're as cliche as it sounds, because we hear this a lot, but you are a lot stronger than, and this isn't forever. That's what I would say. I guess I was going to mention too, I am creating like a little ebook for people that are struggling and people that want help with how to help someone else that's struggling with kratom addiction. So that's in the works, but that'll be on my link. And that's it. I really very much appreciate you having me today.
Thank you. And when that's available, we'll make it the resource of the week. And maybe we can even have you on for a 5-minute update, and you can explain. We'll put it at the end of an episode as a resource, and you can tell people about that when it's available. I think that'd be a great addition to the resources that are out there. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks so much.